you leave this property worthless, man, and let the people with worth talk business.
My wife stood on the front porch of the house I had inherited from my grandfather, laughing as she hurled a full glass of ice-cold water straight into my face in front of the smiling real estate agents and excited new buyers, never knowing that the drenched, humiliated man she was mocking was the secret multi-billionaire who actually owned the entire luxury neighborhood and every house on the street. The water hit my face like a slap, soaking my shirt and dripping down my chin onto the perfectly manicured lawn. I stood frozen on the sidewalk beside the bright blue sold sign, blinking through the droplets as the group on the porch erupted in laughter. Elena lowered the empty glass with a triumphant smile, her long, dark hair swaying as she struck a pose for the agents. The two women in business suits clapped, one of them already typing on her phone. The man in the tailored blue blazer raised his own glass in a mock toast, while the younger couple buying the house grinned like they had just witnessed the funniest closing celebration in history. "See?" Elena called out, voice loud enough for the whole cul-de-sac to hear. "That's what happens when you try to stop progress, Marcus. This house was never really yours anyway. It's time for real people to live here, people who actually know how to provide." The buyers laughed harder. One of the agents wiped a tear from her eye. "Elena, you are something else. Most sellers just hand over the keys. You turn it into performance art." Elena flipped her hair and stepped down from the porch, heels clicking on the stone path. She stopped right in front of me, close enough that I could smell her favorite perfume, the one I had quietly paid for every month for the last 6 years. Her eyes sparkled with pure satisfaction. "Sign the papers, Marcus," she said sweetly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You've been dragging this inheritance around like dead weight long enough. My new life starts today. Yours? Well, good luck finding somewhere to sleep tonight." She turned back to the group and raised her empty glass like a trophy. They cheered again. I wiped the water from my eyes slowly, feeling every drop run down my neck and soak into my simple blue t-shirt. The sun was warm on my skin, but inside I felt ice. 6 years of marriage. 6 years of watching her spend money she thought came from her smart investments and my little side jobs. 6 years of listening to her family call me the broke husband who got lucky inheriting one house. 6 years of silence, while I quietly built something they could never imagine. They had no idea. The house they had just sold for what they believed was a decent price was only the visible tip of my grandfather's legacy, a legacy that included majority ownership of the entire luxury development surrounding us. I had purchased the land and every surrounding property through layered trusts years ago, right after my grandfather passed and left me the original deed in secret. I had turned a quiet inheritance into a multi-billion-dollar empire of high-end communities across 3 states, all while living modestly in this one house so Elena could feel like the successful one. I paid every bill. I funded every vacation. I even quietly covered the unexpected expenses her family kept having. All of it invisible. Because I loved her. Because I thought love meant letting her shine while I stayed in the background. I was wrong. I looked at the sold sign planted proudly in the grass, water still dripping from my chin onto the blue and white letters. The buyers were already taking photos with Elena like she was the star of the closing. One of the agents handed her a bottle of champagne they had brought for the occasion. I finally spoke, voice calm and low enough that only Elena could hear it over the laughter. "You really think this house was all I had?" She rolled her eyes dramatically for the group's benefit. "Marcus, please. Everyone knows that inheritance was the only thing keeping us afloat. Now it's gone, and so are you. Time to grow up." The buyers clapped again. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my phone. One top opened the secure app that controlled every property on this street. I didn't show her, not yet. Instead, I simply nodded once. "Congratulations on the sale," I said quietly. "Enjoy the champagne." Then I turned and walked down the driveway toward my ordinary sedan parked at the curb, the one they had all joked about for years. Behind me, the celebration continued. Elena's laughter rang out the loudest. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and drove away without looking back. In the rearview mirror, the sold sign grew smaller until it disappeared around the corner. Only then did I allow myself a small, private smile. They had just sold my house in front of me while throwing water in my face. They had no idea they had just sold it to me through the development company I owned that had quietly purchased every surrounding lot over the last 3 years. The entire neighborhood belonged to me. The agents worked for my firm. The buyers were signing contracts with a company whose majority shareholder was the same man they had just watched get drenched for entertainment. I drove straight to the private office suite downtown, the one no one in Elena's circle knew existed. The doorman greeted me as Mr. King. The elevator took me straight to the top floor. Inside, the monitors showed live feeds from every property on the block, including the house that now officially belonged to my development company. I sat at the desk and opened the secure folder labeled Heritage Estates, Full Ownership. Every deed, every title, every mortgage note, all mine. I typed a single message to my chief of staff, Vanessa. Me. Activate Protocol Heritage, effective immediately. All new homeowners in the neighborhood receive their welcome packets tomorrow. Include the special clause about future development rights, and schedule a full community meeting for next week. I'll be attending in person. Her reply came in seconds. Vanessa, understood. The water incident is already on the security footage if you ever need it. You good? Me. Better than good. I leaned back in the chair and watched the live feed of the porch. Elena was still posing with the buyers, champagne glass raised high, laughing like she had just won the lottery. She had no idea the lottery ticket she thought she held had always belonged to me. I picked up the phone and made one more call to the private attorney who had handled every quiet acquisition for the last 6 years. Prepare the full ownership disclosure package, include every property on the block, and draft the personal letter. It's time they learned exactly who just got water thrown in his face. I ended the call and looked out at the city. The woman who had mocked me in front of strangers had just sold the one house she thought gave her power. Tomorrow, she would wake up in a neighborhood where every single home, including the one she had just celebrated selling, belonged to the man she humiliated. And the real celebration was only beginning. The ordinary block sedan carried me away from the cul-de-sac like any other car on any other afternoon. But the man behind the wheel was no longer ordinary. Water still clung to my shirt collar and cooled against my skin as I merged onto the highway, the sold sign shrinking in the rearview mirror until it vanished completely. Elena's laughter still rang in my ears, sharp, triumphant, echoed by the agents and the new buyers. But it no longer cut. It simply confirmed what I had known for years. Silence had been my shield, not my weakness. I drove straight to the private office suite downtown, the one tucked behind unmarked glass on the 42nd floor of a tower no one associated with my name. The doorman nodded without question. The elevator rose without stopping. Inside, the room was quiet except for the soft hum of monitors displaying live feeds from every property in Heritage Estates, the luxury neighborhood Elena had just celebrated selling out from under me. I sat at the walnut desk and opened the secure dashboard. One click pulled up the transaction record for the house on Maple Lane. The closing had completed at 3:47 p.m. Funds wired from the buyer's account to the escrow held by Heritage Realty Group, my company. The title had transferred cleanly to Heritage Holdings LLC, another layer of the trust structure I controlled. The buyers thought they had purchased a dream home from a seller eager to move on. In reality, they had simply handed money to the man whose face was still wet from the glass Elena had thrown. I leaned back and exhaled slowly. 6 years ago, when my grandfather passed and left me the original deed to that single house, I had seen the potential no one else had. The quiet street, the perfect location, the zoning that allowed for controlled expansion. I had started buying adjacent lots through anonymous entities, first 1, then 3, then the entire block, then the whole development. Billions moved through offshore trusts and layered companies so quietly that even the county records showed nothing but shell names. I paid every tax bill. I funded every improvement. I let Elena and her circle believe the neighborhood's rising value came from good timing and smart investments. I never corrected them. Because I loved her. Because I thought love meant letting her feel secure without the burden of knowing how deep the security ran. I was wrong. I opened the live feed from the porch camera. The celebration was winding down. Elena stood in the doorway holding the keys, posing for one last photo with the buyers. The agents were packing up signs and paperwork. The champagne bottle was nearly empty. Elena's smile was wide, victorious, the same smile she had worn when she told me last month that it was time to upgrade our life and that this old house was holding us back. I paused the feed on her face. Then I typed a single message to Vanessa. Me. Activate full disclosure protocol for Heritage Estates. Send welcome packets to all current homeowners tomorrow morning. Include the ownership summary and the special development clause. Schedule the community meeting for next Saturday at the clubhouse. I will attend in person. No advance notice to Elena or her circle. Vanessa's reply came almost instantly. Vanessa, packets printing now. Meeting booked. Security will be discreet but present. The water footage is archived if you ever need it for legal purposes. You still good? Me. I'm good. Better than I've been in years. I closed the laptop and stood at the window overlooking the city. The sun was setting now, painting the skyline in deep oranges and purples. Somewhere in that glow, Elena was probably already planning how to spend the windfall from the sale. A new condo downtown, a trip to Paris, more designer pieces to show her friends how far she had come from that little inherited house. She had no idea the windfall had come from me, that every dollar wired to her account over the years had come from accounts I controlled, that the neighborhood she had just celebrated escaping was now entirely mine. Every lawn, every driveway, every sold sign. I walked to the small bar cart in the corner and poured a single glass of sparkling water. No alcohol, no celebration, just clarity. My phone buzzed. Elena. I let it ring once, twice, then answered on the third. Marcus? Her voice was bright, still riding the high of the afternoon. The buyers are thrilled. They're moving in next month. I already have plans for the money. A new condo downtown, maybe something with a view. You should be happy for me. This is the fresh start we both needed. I listened without speaking. Marcus, are you there? You're not going to solt about this, are you? It's just a house. We'll find you somewhere small, maybe an apartment near your little office. I finally spoke, voice calm and even. You sold the house today. She laughed, light, careless. Yes, I did, and it felt amazing. No more living in your grandfather's shadow. No more pretending we're tied to that old place. We're free. You sold it to me, I said quietly. Silence stretched across the line. What? She asked, confusion replacing the laughter. The buyers signed with Heritage Realty Group. The title transferred to Heritage Holdings, LLC. Both companies are mine. You didn't sell the house to strangers, Elena. You sold it back to me, the man you just threw water on in front of everyone. Another long silence. Then a nervous laugh. That's not funny, Marcus. Stop playing games. I'm not playing, I said. Check the escrow statement when it arrives tomorrow, or look at the neighborhood welcome packet that will be delivered to every homeowner on the block, including the new owners of Maple Lane. You'll see the ownership summary. Every property in Heritage Estates belongs to me. I bought the land quietly years ago. I developed it. I own it. All of it. Her breathing changed, quicker, shallower. You're lying, she whispered. Am I? I asked gently. Or did you just spend the afternoon celebrating a sale that put money right back into the account of the husband you called useless? She made a small sound, half gasp, half sob. Marcus, what have you done? I did what I always did. I protected what was mine. Quietly, completely. You just never saw it. I ended the call. She called back 3 times in the next minute. I let each one ring out. Then I turned off the phone and walked back to the window. The city lights were fully on now, bright and unapologetic. Tomorrow, the welcome packets would arrive. elegant envelopes explaining the new ownership structure, the future development plans, and the quiet clause that gave me first right of refusal on any resale. Tomorrow, Elena would open hers and see the truth printed in clean black ink. Tomorrow, the laughter from the porch would turn to something else entirely. And when it did, the man she had drenched in front of strangers would be the one deciding exactly how much of her new life remained. The morning after the sale dawned bright and unforgiving over Heritage Estates. I stood at the penthouse window with a cup of black coffee, watching the first rays of sunlight touch the rooftops of every house on the block, houses that now officially belonged to me through the layered trusts no one had ever questioned. The sold sign still stood in the front yard of the Maple Lane property like a victory flag Elena had planted herself. I hadn't slept much, but I didn't need sleep. Clarity was enough. At exactly 7 a.m., the delivery vans rolled quietly through the neighborhood. White envelopes with the elegant Heritage Realty logo were placed on every doorstep, including the one Elena had just celebrated selling. Each packet contained the same simple document, a full ownership summary of Heritage Estates, the future development plans, and the clause that gave the majority shareholder first right of refusal on any resale. My name appeared nowhere on the public copies. Not yet. I watched the live security feed as the courier placed Elena's packet on the porch of the house she no longer owned. She opened the door moments later, still in her robe, hair tousled from sleep. She picked up the envelope, glanced at the logo, and carried it inside without a second thought. Probably assumed it was closing paperwork or a welcome gift from the buyers. I waited. At 7:23 a.m., my phone rang. Elena. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Marcus," she said the moment the line connected, voice already shaking. "What is this packet? It says the entire neighborhood is owned by Heritage Holdings, LLC. It lists every single house, including the one I just sold. It says the new buyers are tenants under a master lease. What the hell is going on?" I took a slow sip of coffee. "You sold the house yesterday," I reminded her calmly. "You celebrated it. You threw water in my face in front of everyone and laughed while they clapped. Now you're reading the fine print." She made a small, frantic sound. "This can't be real. The buyers paid me directly. The agents handled everything. It was clean. It was mine to sell." "It was never yours to sell," I said quietly. "The title was always held in trust. The escrow funds were routed through my company. The buyers signed a lease agreement with Heritage Holdings, my company. They think they bought a home. In reality, they signed a long-term lease in a community I own entirely." Silence stretched so long I could hear her breathing turn ragged. "You're lying," she whispered again, but the conviction was gone. You don't have that kind of money. You've been driving the same car for 6 years. You let me pay for everything. You let me believe you were poor." "Poor?" I finished gently. "Useless? Dragging you down with an old inherited house?" I heard papers rustling on her end as she flipped through the packet faster. "There's a clause here," she said, voice rising. "It says the majority shareholder has the right to repurchase any property in the neighborhood at the original sale price plus 10%. And the majority shareholder is listed as Marcus King. That's you. That's your middle name, Marcus King." "Yes." A soft thud, the packet hitting the floor. "Marcus, how long?" 6 years, I answered. "Right after my grandfather passed and left me the original deed. I saw the potential. I bought the surrounding land quietly. I developed the entire neighborhood while you and your friends called it that cute little street. Every mortgage payment you thought came from our savings came from accounts I controlled. Every upgrade, every property tax bill, every single house on this block has always belonged to me." She was crying now, not the triumphant tears of yesterday, but the raw, broken kind that comes when the ground disappears beneath you. "I threw water on you," she whispered, "in front of the agents, in front of the buyers. I laughed. I called you useless. I told everyone the house was holding us back. And the whole time, you owned the street? Yes. Another long silence. My family is coming over this morning, she said, voice small. They want to celebrate the sale. They want to see the check. What am I supposed to tell them? Tell them the truth, or don't. The choice is yours now. The welcome packets are already at every doorstep. By noon, the entire neighborhood will know that the man they watched get drenched yesterday owns every home they live in, including the one you just sold. I heard her sink onto the couch. Marcus, please, I'm sorry. I was cruel. I was blind. I thought I was freeing us both. I thought you thought I was nothing, I finished softly. Yesterday proved it. I ended the call. The feed from the porch camera showed her still sitting on the floor, packets scattered around her, head in her hands. The new buyer's car pulled into the driveway moments later. They had come to measure for curtains. Elena didn't move. She simply stared at the sold sign like it had betrayed her. I closed the laptop and stood. The rest of the morning passed in quiet control. Vanessa confirmed every packet had been delivered. The community meeting for next Saturday was fully booked. 3 homeowners had already called the office asking for clarification. Polite, nervous calls. I instructed her to schedule them all for the same afternoon slot. At 11:45 a.m., my phone rang again. This time, it was Elena's mother. I answered. Marcus, she said, voice trembling with the same disbelief I had heard in Elena's. Elena just showed us the packet. She's hysterical. She says you own the whole neighborhood, that the sale yesterday wasn't real, that you let us all believe she was finally getting ahead while you owned everything. Owned everything, I finished calmly. Yes. Her mother started crying openly. We laughed at you yesterday. We all did. Elena threw water on you like you were a joke. And the whole time, you were the one who... Oh God, what have we done? I let her cry for a moment. You did what you always did, I said. You assumed the man standing in front of you had nothing. Tomorrow, the entire neighborhood will meet the man who actually owns everything. You're welcome to attend. Seats will be reserved for the family. I ended the call. By 2 p.m., the news had begun to spread through the neighborhood group chat. Questions turned to stunned silence. One neighbor posted a photo of the welcome packet with the caption, "Is this real?" Another replied with a single word, "King." I drove back to the penthouse in the same ordinary sedan Elena mocked for years. I parked in the underground garage and took the private elevator up. On the nightstand, Elena's original letter still waited beside the now signed divorce papers. I picked up the letter one last time and read the final line again. If you can ever find it in your heart to sit across from me again, I will spend the rest of my life showing you the woman I am becoming because of you. I folded it and placed it back. The divorce would be final soon. The neighborhood meeting was 6 days away, and somewhere between the water that had hit my face yesterday and the truth that would hit the entire street next Saturday, Elena was learning the same lesson her family was about to learn. The man they had humiliated in front of strangers had never been the one with nothing. He had been the one holding everything, all along. The neighborhood group chat exploded by 3 p.m. I watched it unfold in real time on one of the monitors in the penthouse, the messages scrolling like a slow-motion wave breaking over everyone who had stood on that porch and laughed. Neighbor 1. Did anyone else get this packet? It says Heritage Holdings owns the whole street. Neighbor 2. Mine says the same thing. I thought I bought my house free and clear. New buyer, Maple Lane. We just closed yesterday. The seller threw water on some guy and celebrated like she won the lottery. Now this? Neighbor 3. The majority shareholder is listed as M. King. Anyone know who that is? I leaned back in the chair and let the conversation build. No one tagged Elena yet. They were still piecing it together. But I knew it was only a matter of time. At 3:27 p.m., Elena's name finally appeared. This is a mistake. I sold my house yesterday. Everything is fine. Your house? The packet says the title transferred to Heritage Holdings. That's the same company that owns everything. It's just paperwork. I'll fix it. She stopped typing after that. I could picture her in the living room of the house she no longer owned, staring at her phone while the new buyers measured windows in the background. The celebration champagne was probably still sitting on the counter, warm and forgotten. My phone rang again. This time, it was her father. "Marcus," he said the moment I answered, voice thick with disbelief. "Elena just showed us the packet. She's in tears. She says you own the entire neighborhood, that the sale yesterday, that the water, that we were all laughing at the man who actually owns our homes. Tell me this is some kind of joke." "It's not a joke," I replied calmly. "The deeds are public record if you look under the holding companies. Every property on the street has been under my control for years. I developed the land quietly after my grandfather passed. I let you all believe the neighborhood was growing on its own. I paid every bill, every tax, every improvement, while Elena told her friends I was dragging her down with an old inherited house." He was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice cracked. "We humiliated you yesterday, in front of strangers. Elena threw water on you like you were nothing. And the whole time, you owned the ground we were standing on." "Yes." Another pause. "What do you want from us?" he asked quietly. "Nothing you haven't already given. The neighborhood meeting is next Saturday at the clubhouse. Every homeowner is invited. You and your family are welcome to attend. Seats will be reserved in the front row." I ended the call before he could reply. The rest of the afternoon passed in quiet preparation. Vanessa sent me the final agenda for the community meeting: a short welcome, an overview of future development plans, and a clear explanation of ownership rights. No drama, no public shaming, just truth, delivered calmly and professionally. I approved it without changes. At 6:15 p.m., Elena called again. This time, I answered on the first ring. "Marcus," she said, voice raw, "the new buyers just left. They're confused. They want to know if their purchase is still valid. I didn't know what to tell them. I don't know what to tell anyone anymore." "You tell them the truth," I said gently. "Their purchase is valid. They own the right to live in the house under a long-term lease with Heritage Holdings. They can stay as long as they like. The only difference is they now know who actually owns the neighborhood." She let out a shaky breath. "You humiliated me. In front of them. I laughed while they clapped. I told them you were holding me back. And the whole time, you were the one who... God, Marcus, I threw water on you like you were a joke." "You did." "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I was cruel. I was blind. I thought selling the house would give me freedom. Instead, it just showed me how trapped I've been in my own pride." I listened without interrupting. "My family wants to come see you. They're terrified. My mother keeps saying we destroyed the best thing that ever happened to us. My father just sits there staring at the packet like it's a death sentence. What should I tell them?" "Tell them the meeting is next Saturday. They can speak then if they want, or they can stay silent. The choice is theirs now, the same way it was mine for 6 years." She was crying quietly on the other end. "Will you be there?" she asked. "I will." "Will you look at me?" I paused for the first time. "I'll look at everyone," I said, "including you." I ended the call. The sun had set by then. The neighborhood lights were coming on one by one. Warm windows and houses that now knew the truth. I watched the live feeds for a while longer. Elena's porch light stayed on late into the night. She sat on the steps with the packet in her lap, reading it over and over under the glow of the lamp. Finally, I turned off the monitors and walked to the window. 6 years of silence had ended yesterday with a glass of water to the face. Next Saturday, the entire neighborhood would hear the rest of the story. And the woman who had thrown that water would have to sit in the front row and watch the man she had mocked step fully into the light he had quietly built for all of them. The celebration on the porch was over. The real reckoning was only beginning. The days between the sale and the community meeting stretched like a slow, deliberate countdown. I moved through them with the same quiet focus I had used for 6 years, only this time the silence was no longer a shield. It was a choice. Every morning I reviewed the live feeds from Heritage Estates, watching the neighborhood absorb the truth one household at a time. The welcome packets had done their work. Doors that once opened with casual waves now stayed closed a little longer. Conversations on front lawns grew hushed. The sold sign on Maple Lane still stood, but no one celebrated near it anymore. Elena's porch light stayed on late every night. The security camera showed her sitting on the steps with the packet open in her lap, reading and rereading the ownership summary as if the words might rearrange themselves into something she could understand. The new buyers had already moved in a few boxes, but they kept their distance from her now. They had received their own packet and understood they were tenants in a community owned by the man their seller had publicly humiliated. On Wednesday evening, my phone rang while I was reviewing the final agenda for Saturday's meeting. It was Elena's mother again. "Marcus," she said, voice exhausted and small. "Elena hasn't slept. She sits on those steps until dawn. She keeps saying she threw water on you like you were nothing. She keeps asking how she missed it all. Her father, he won't even look at the packet anymore. He just stares at old photos of you and Elena on your wedding day. We were so cruel, so blind. Please, tell us what you want from us." I answered calmly, "I want nothing you haven't already given. The meeting is Saturday at 2 p.m. in the clubhouse. You're all invited. Sit wherever you like. Speak if you wish, or simply listen. The choice is yours now." She cried quietly on the line. "We laughed at you in front of strangers. Elena threw water on you while we clapped. And you own the ground we're standing on. How do we even begin to apologize for that?" "You begin by showing up on Saturday. That's all." I ended the call. Thursday brought the first wave of direct neighbor messages. Some were polite and confused. Others were stunned and apologetic. One older couple who had lived on the street since the beginning sent a handwritten note through the office. "We always thought you were the quiet young man who married Elena. We had no idea you were the reason our neighborhood stayed beautiful and safe. We're sorry for any time we looked the other way when she spoke poorly of you. We will be at the meeting." I read every message. I answered none directly. The truth was doing its own work now. Friday afternoon, Vanessa stopped by the penthouse with the final seating chart for the clubhouse. "Elena requested a seat in the back row," she said. "Her family asked for the same. I placed them together near the side exit, close enough to hear everything, far enough to leave quietly if they need to. The new buyers from Maple Lane will be in the front. They want to ask about their lease terms." I nodded. "Good. Keep it professional. No drama. Just facts." Vanessa studied me for a moment. "You're really going to stand in front of all of them and explain everything calmly?" "Yes," I said. "They watched me get water thrown in my face. They deserve to hear the rest of the story the same way, without anger, without revenge, just truth." She left the chart on the desk and paused at the door. "Elena called the office again this morning. She didn't ask for you. She only asked you to tell her that she's been reading your grandfather's old letters she found in the attic. She says they made her cry because they talk about you the same way she now sees you, as the man who always carried more than anyone knew." I didn't reply. Vanessa left quietly. That night, I drove past the neighborhood one last time before the meeting. The streets were quiet under the streetlights. The sold sign on Maple Lane had been taken down by the new buyers, but the porch light at the house was still on. Elena sat on the steps again, knees drawn up, the packet open beside her. She didn't see my car. I didn't stop. Saturday arrived warm and clear. I dressed simply. Charcoal slacks, white shirt, no tie. The platinum band stayed in the drawer. I drove to the clubhouse at 1:30 p.m. The parking lot was already filling. Neighbors I had seen every day for years now looked at me differently when I stepped out of the car. Some nodded respectfully, others looked away, embarrassed. Inside the clubhouse, the room was set with neat rows of chairs. The front row held new Maple Lane buyers. The side row near the exit held Elena and her family, all four of them sitting close together, faces pale and drawn. Elena's eyes found mine the moment I entered. She didn't look away. She simply offered a small, sad nod. I walked to the podium at 2 p.m. sharp. The room fell silent. "Thank you for coming," I began, voice steady and carrying easily. 6 days ago, many of you watched as the previous owner of the Maple Lane house celebrated its sale. Some of you laughed when she threw a glass of water in my face. Others simply stood and smiled. I understand why. You believed what she believed, that I was the useless husband living off an old inheritance. Today, I'm here to tell you the rest of the story. I clicked the remote. The large screen behind me lit up with the same ownership summary that had been in every welcome packet. Heritage Estates has been under my control for 6 years. I purchased the land quietly after my grandfather left me the original deed. I developed every home, every street, every improvement while living modestly in the one house on Maple Lane. I let the previous owner and her family believe the neighborhood's success was their own. I paid every bill. I funded every upgrade. I protected every home while they called me the man who held her back. A ripple moved through the room. Eyes turned toward Elena's row. "I am not here to punish anyone," I continued. "The new buyers on Maple Lane have a valid long-term lease. Everyone here retains the right to live in their homes under the same terms. The only change is transparency. From today forward, this community is managed openly by the man who built it. Future development will focus on sustainability and opportunity for the people who actually live here, not on appearances or pride." I looked directly at Elena's row for the first time. "Yesterday, some of you laughed while water was thrown in my face. Today, I ask only that you listen. The man you saw standing on the sidewalk that afternoon owns the ground beneath your feet. He always did. And he chose silence for 6 years because he believed love meant protecting the people he cared about. That silence ended the moment that glass of water hit the ground. The room was completely still. I stepped away from the podium. The meeting is now open for questions. I will answer every one honestly. After that, the future of Heritage Estates belongs to all of us, together." Elena's eyes never left mine as the first hand went up. The reckoning had begun, and for the first time since the water had soaked my shirt on that porch, I felt completely at peace with whatever came next. The first hand that rose belonged to the new buyer from Maple Lane, the young husband who had stood on the porch clapping while Elena threw the water. He stood slowly, voice steady but respectful. "Mr. King," he said, "my wife and I signed the papers thinking we were buying a home outright. The packet says we're under a long-term lease with Heritage Holdings. Are we still welcome here, or should we start looking for somewhere else?" The entire room turned toward me. Elena's family sat rigid in their side row seats, her father gripping the armrest so tightly his knuckles were white. Elena herself stared at the floor, shoulders drawn inward as if trying to disappear. "You are welcome," I answered clearly. "The lease is for 25 years at the same payment structure you agreed to. The only difference now is full transparency. You own the right to live in the home and make it yours. I own the land beneath it and the community around it. Future improvements, parks, security, sustainability upgrades will be decided together. No one is being asked to leave." A ripple of quiet relief moved through the crowd. Several neighbors nodded. The buyer sat down, visibly calmer. The next hand belonged to an older woman who had lived 3 houses down for 15 years. She stood, voice trembling with emotion. "I've seen you around the neighborhood for years, Marcus. Quiet, always polite. We all thought you were just the husband who got lucky with one inherited house. Yesterday, I watched Elena throw water on you while we laughed. Today, I read that packet and realized you built everything we love about this street. I'm ashamed. We all are. I just wanted to say thank you for protecting this place when we didn't even know it needed protecting." Murmurs of agreement spread. A few people wiped their eyes. Elena's mother covered her face with both hands. Her father stared straight ahead, jaw tight. I nodded once. "Thank you. I didn't build it for recognition. I built it because my grandfather taught me that a community is only as strong as the people willing to carry it quietly. That chapter is over. From today, we carry it together, openly." More hands rose. Questions came one after another, about future plans, about lease protections, about how the transition would work. I answered every one honestly and without anger. No one mentioned the water incident directly, but it hung in the air like the memory of rain on dry pavement. Then the room fell quiet again. The last hand to rise was Elena's. She stood slowly, eyes red but voice clear enough to carry. "I don't have a question," she said, looking straight at me. "I have an apology. Yesterday, I stood on the porch of the house I thought I owned and threw water in the face of the man who actually owned it. I laughed. I mocked him. I told everyone he was useless and that the house was holding me back. I did it in front of agents, in front of new buyers, in front of neighbors who trusted me. I was cruel because I was blind. I believed my own pride instead of seeing the man who had been carrying my entire world in silence for 6 years." Her voice cracked, but she kept going. "Today I learned that every house on this street belongs to him, that every upgrade, every tax bill, every moment of stability I took for granted came from him. I sold a house that was never mine to sell. I celebrated taking away the one visible thing I thought he had, and the whole time, he owned everything, including the ground I was standing on while I humiliated him." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. "I'm sorry, Marcus. To you, to every neighbor here who witnessed what I did, to the buyers who thought they were celebrating with me. I was wrong, deeply, unforgivably wrong. I don't expect forgiveness today. I only want you all to know that the woman who threw that water no longer exists. I'm learning who I really am and who the man I hurt truly was." The room was completely silent. Elena sat down. Her family didn't look at her. They couldn't. Her father stared at his hands. Her mother wept openly. I stepped back to the podium. "Thank you for your honesty," I said quietly. "The past cannot be erased, but it can be learned from. This community belongs to all of us now, not to one man, not to one family. The meeting is adjourned. Anyone who wishes to speak privately may schedule time through the office. The rest of the afternoon is yours." People stood slowly. Some approached me to shake my hand. Others simply nodded with respect as they left. Elena's family remained seated until the room was nearly empty. Only then did they rise. Her father walked up to me first. His eyes were wet. "I have no right to ask for anything, but I want you to know we are moving out of the neighborhood by the end of the month. We're selling our house back to you at whatever price you set. We don't want to live where we once laughed at the man who protected us." I met his gaze. "You don't have to leave," I said. "Stay if you wish. The lease remains the same. The choice is yours." He nodded once, unable to speak, then turned and helped Elena's mother to her feet. Marcus, her brother, followed without a word. Elena was the last to approach. She stood a few feet away, hands clasped tightly in front of her. "I meant every word," she whispered. "I'm not asking for another chance. I'm only asking that one day, when you're ready, you might let me sit across from you again and show you the woman I'm trying to become." I looked at her, really looked. The same woman who had thrown water on me while strangers clapped now stood with nothing left to hide. "One day," I said quietly. "Not today, but one day." She closed her eyes for a moment, a small, grateful nod the only answer she gave. Then she turned and walked out with her family. The clubhouse emptied. I stood alone at the podium for a long moment, looking at the rows of empty chairs where the laughter of yesterday had once echoed. The water on the porch was gone. The truth had taken its place. And in the quiet that followed, the man they had drenched and mocked finally felt the full weight of 6 years of silence lift completely. The neighborhood was his. The future was his. And for the first time, the choice of what came next belonged to him alone. The clubhouse doors closed behind the last neighbor with a soft, final click that seemed to echo through the empty room. I remained at the podium for a long moment, the silence after the meeting feeling heavier than any applause could have been. The chairs where Elena and her family had sat were now vacant, yet their presence lingered like the faint scent of rain after a storm. I had spoken the truth without raising my voice, without accusation, without the anger that had simmered beneath the surface since the glass of water hit my face 6 days earlier. Now the neighborhood knew. The weight I had carried alone for 6 years was finally shared. I walked outside into the warm afternoon light. The street looked the same as it always had: manicured lawns, quiet driveways, the sold sign long removed from Maple Lane, but everything felt different. Neighbors who had once waved casually now offered respectful nods as they passed. One older gentleman who had lived at the end of the block for decades stopped beside me. "I've been here since the beginning," he said quietly. "I watched you and Elena move in. I heard the things she said about you over the years. I never spoke up. I'm sorry for that. Thank you for what you built here. We're lucky to have you." I shook his hand. "We're all lucky to have each other now." He walked away, and I continued down the sidewalk toward the Maple Lane house. The new buyers were unloading a few more boxes from their car. They saw me and paused, offering tentative smiles. "Mr. King," the husband said, extending his hand, "we just wanted to say we're grateful. The lease is more than fair. We love the house, and we're sorry for what happened on closing day. We didn't know." I shook his hand firmly. "The past is behind us. Make the house your own. That's what matters." They thanked me again and returned to their work. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking at the porch where Elena had once raised her glass in triumph. The memory of the water hitting my face no longer burned. It simply existed, a fact, like the ownership deeds now filed for everyone to see. My phone vibrated in my pocket. "Vanessa, feedback from the meeting is overwhelmingly positive. 3 families have already scheduled private meetings to discuss long-term plans. Elena's family left quietly after you finished speaking. She asked me to pass along one message. I heard every word. I'm still learning. Thank you for letting me stay." I typed a short reply. "Thank her for coming. No further message needed today." I slipped the phone away and walked back to my car. The ordinary sedan that Elena and her circle had mocked for years now felt like the right vehicle for the man I had become, unassuming on the outside, powerful beneath the surface. I drove toward the penthouse, the neighborhood shrinking in the rearview mirror until it looked like any other quiet street. Back in the suite, the city skyline glowed in the late afternoon sun. I stood at the glass wall and watched the light shift across the towers. 6 years of silence had ended. The truth had been spoken. The neighborhood now knew the man who had protected it. What remained was deciding what to do with the pieces of my life that had been drenched on that porch. The signed divorce papers sat on the desk beside Elena's letter. I picked up the letter again and read the final paragraph one more time. Her words had not changed, but the way I heard them had. She was no longer the woman who threw water on me while strangers clapped. She was the woman who sat in the front row today and spoke her apology in front of the entire community. I set the letter down and opened my laptop. One new email waited from the foundation director. Subject: Scholarship Update. The students have been talking about you non-stop since the news broke. They want to know if you'll speak at the next award ceremony. They say the man who endured public humiliation while building something greater is the example they want to follow. I replied immediately, "I'll be there. Tell them the story is theirs now, too." I closed the laptop and walked to the drawer where the platinum band still rested. I took it out, turned it once in the light, and slipped it back onto my finger. Not as a return to the past, as a reminder that some things broken can be remade stronger. The evening passed quietly. I reviewed final development plans for the neighborhood: new community gardens, upgraded security, a scholarship pathway for local students. Everything felt purposeful now, free of the need to hide. At 9:17 p.m., my phone rang. Vanessa. I answered. "Marcus," she said softly, "I just got home from my parents' house. They're still processing everything. My father said he's proud of the man you've always been. He asked me to tell you he's withdrawing his name from any remaining family accounts. He wants to start fresh, too." She paused, her voice gentler than I had heard in years. "I sat in that meeting today and listened to you speak. You didn't shame anyone. You didn't gloat. You just told the truth. And I realized that's the man I married, the one who protected us even when we didn't deserve it. I'm not asking for the marriage back. I know that chapter closed when the papers were signed. But if you ever want to talk, really talk, like two people who once loved each other, I'll be ready. No pressure, no expectations, just honesty." I listened to the quiet hope in her voice. "I heard you today. I saw you, the woman who stood up and apologized in front of everyone. That took courage. I'm not ready to say the door is wide open yet, but I'm not ready to close it forever either." A soft exhale of relief came through the line. "That's more than I hoped for," she whispered. "Thank you." We ended the call without promises. I stood at the window once more, looking out at the glowing city. The neighborhood I had built in silence now knew the truth. The woman who had humiliated me in front of strangers had begun her own quiet reckoning. The man they had mocked as useless had stepped fully into the light. Tomorrow, the new development plans would be shared with the community. Tomorrow, the future would begin to take shape. And somewhere in the gentle space between yesterday's water and tomorrow's possibilities, I allowed myself to feel the first real sense of peace I had known in 6 long years. The glass that had been thrown was empty. The story it began was only now being written. The weeks after the community meeting unfolded with the steady grace of a neighborhood learning to breathe again. I watched it happen from the penthouse window each morning. The ordinary black sedan parked below reminded me daily of the man I had chosen to be. No more hiding, no more pretending. Heritage Estates was no longer a secret empire carried in silence. It was a living community where every homeowner now understood exactly who had protected it for 6 years. The new buyers on Maple Lane settled in quietly. They planted flowers along the walkway and sent a handwritten thank you note to the office. "We're grateful for the transparency. The house feels like home already." Neighbors who had once waved politely now stopped to speak when they saw me walking the sidewalks. Real conversations about future gardens, new playground plans, and the scholarship pathway I had quietly expanded. No one mentioned the glass of water anymore. The memory lingered, but it no longer defined the street. Elena kept her word. She stayed in the small apartment near the park, working full-time at the Scholarship Foundation. I heard through Vanessa that she arrived early every day, stayed late, and never once asked for special treatment. Her family had moved to a modest condo across town. Her father taught engineering ethics 3 days a week. Her brother Marcus took a job at a local logistics firm and sent a single message through the office. "I'm learning what real work feels like. Thank you for the example." I didn't reach out to any of them. The door I had left slightly open after the meeting remained that way, not closed, not wide open, just waiting for the right moment. On a quiet Tuesday evening, I drove past the old Maple Lane house. The new owners had hung wind chimes on the porch and placed a small bench where Elena once stood with her champagne glass. I parked at the curb for the first time since the sale and walked the sidewalk slowly. The grass still held the faint memory of water droplets from that afternoon, but the ground felt solid beneath my shoes, the same ground I had owned all along. My phone vibrated. Elena. I answered. "Marcus," she said softly, "I saw you drive by the house earlier. I wasn't following you. I was just walking the neighborhood like I used to when we first moved in. I wanted to tell you something in person, but I didn't want to intrude. May I meet you somewhere? Just for a few minutes. No pressure, no expectations." I looked at the porch where Elena once laughed while water ran down my face. "The park bench by the oak tree," I said. 20 minutes. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on the same bench where I had read her letter weeks earlier. She wore the simple white blouse and jeans again, no designer labels, no armor. Her hands rested quietly in her lap as I sat beside her, leaving space between us. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I've been thinking about that day on the porch every single night. The way the water hit your face, the way I laughed while everyone clapped. I keep seeing it in my dreams, not as a victory anymore, as the moment I lost the best thing I ever had." She turned slightly towards me, eyes clear and honest. "I've started writing again," she continued. "Not letters to you, letters to myself, about the woman I was and the woman I want to become. The foundation director asked me to speak at the next student awards. I said yes, but only if I could tell the truth, that the man who funded their dreams endured public humiliation while protecting everything they hoped to build. They said they want to hear it from me because I was part of the story." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. "This isn't another apology letter," she said. "It's the scholarship application I helped a student complete yesterday. He wrote about wanting to build communities that last. I told him about you, not the billionaire, but the man who built one in silence. He asked me to give this to you. He said he wants to thank the person who made his dream possible." I took the envelope, but didn't open it yet. "You're different," I told her quietly. "The woman who threw that water is gone." She nodded, a small smile touching her lips. "I hope so. I still live in the apartment. I still work at the foundation. I still wake up every morning knowing I hurt the man who carried my entire world. But I'm trying to carry something good now, for the students, for the neighborhood, for myself." We sat in silence for a long moment, the evening breeze moving through the oak leaves above us. Fireflies began to rise from the grass, tiny lights flickering like the first stars of the night. "I'm not ready to say the door is wide open," I said, finally, "but I'm not closing it either. The neighborhood is healing, the company is stronger than ever, and I'm learning how to live without carrying everything alone. Maybe one day soon we can sit here again, or at the rooftop restaurant, not as husband and wife, just as two people who survived the same storm." Elena's eyes filled with quiet hope, but she didn't push. "I would like that," she whispered. Whenever you're ready, I'll be here, not waiting for the past, but hoping for whatever honest future we might still build." She stood slowly, giving me space. "Thank you for tonight," she said, "for listening, for letting me sit beside you without expecting anything back." She walked away into the gathering dusk, her steps lighter than they had been in months. I remained on the bench a while longer, the unopened envelope in my hands. When I finally opened it, the student's application was inside, along with a short note he had written at the bottom. "Thank you to Mr. King for showing us that real power is quiet until it chooses to speak. I want to build like that one day." I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket beside Elena's earlier letter. The night deepened around me. The neighborhood lights glowed warmly in the distance, every house on the street now part of something honest and shared. The man who had been drenched and mocked on that porch had become the man who chose how the story continued. Tomorrow, the new community garden plans would be unveiled. Tomorrow, Elena would speak at the foundation. And somewhere between those tomorrows, the door I had left ajar began to feel a little wider, not because of the empire, not because of the past, but because two people who had once loved deeply were learning to see each other clearly for the first time. The water on the porch had dried up long ago. What remained was the ground beneath it, solid, owned, and finally ready for whatever came next. The next morning arrived soft and golden, the kind of Atlanta light that makes every blade of grass in Heritage Estates look freshly washed. I left the penthouse early, the student's note still folded in my pocket beside Elena's letter. The ordinary black sedan carried me through the neighborhood streets without hurry. For the first time since the glass of water had hit my face on that porch, I felt no need to brace myself. The truth had been spoken. The neighborhood knew. Now it was time to build forward. The community garden unveiling was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the new plot near the clubhouse, a project I had quietly funded months earlier but only now revealed. Neighbors were already gathering when I arrived. Children ran between rows of raised beds. Parents carried small shovels and pockets of seeds. The new buyers from Maple Lane were there with their own contribution, a hand-painted sign that read, "Heritage Community Garden, grown together." I stepped into the circle as the ribbon was cut. Applause rose naturally, not forced. Several people came forward to shake my hand and thank me for the space. One young mother told me her daughter had already claimed a tomato plant because Mr. King made sure we all have a place to grow something real. I smiled quietly. This was the kind of legacy my grandfather would have been proud of, not marble lobbies or billion-dollar towers, but dirt under fingernails and children learning that something beautiful can come from patience. As the event wound down, I noticed Elena standing at the edge of the crowd. She wore the same simple white blouse from the park bench, a small trowel in her hand, helping a group of children plant herbs. She didn't approach me. She simply worked beside them, laughing softly when a little boy got dirt on his nose. The woman who had once thrown water in my face while strangers clapped now knelt in the soil, teaching patience to the next generation. Our eyes met across the garden. She offered a small nod, no demand, no performance, then returned to helping the children. I felt the door between us shift another inch wider. The afternoon brought the Scholarship Foundation ceremony. I arrived just before it began and took a seat in the back row. The students filled the auditorium with nervous energy. When the director introduced the speaker for the day, Elena walked to the podium with quiet confidence. She didn't look at me. She looked at the students. "I'm here today because someone once funded your dreams without ever needing credit," she began, voice steady. "That man endured public humiliation while protecting everything you hope to build. He carried an entire neighborhood in silence so the rest of us could keep our pride. I know this because I was part of the story. I was the one who laughed when he was mocked. I was the one who threw water in his face while others clapped. And I was the one who learned, too late, that the man I hurt was the one who made every opportunity in this room possible. The room was completely still. Elena continued without flinching. I won't ask for your forgiveness today. I'm still earning it for myself. But I will ask you to remember this. Real power doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is the one willing to stay quiet so others can shine. That man is here today, not for applause, just to see you succeed. Let his example be the one you carry forward. Build with patience, protect with grace, and never forget that the ground beneath your feet was prepared by someone who loved enough to stay invisible. She stepped down to sustained applause. Students rose to their feet. Several came forward to hug her. She accepted each one with quiet humility, eyes glistening but dry. I stayed in my seat until the room emptied. Only then did I walk to the front where she was gathering her notes. You spoke well, I said. She turned, surprised but composed. I meant every word. The students deserved the truth, and you deserved to hear it spoken out loud. We stood in the quiet auditorium, the echo of applause still fading around us. I read your letter again last night, and the student's note. Both reminded me that some doors don't close completely unless we force them shut. Elena's breath caught. I'm not asking for anything, she said softly. But if you ever want to walk through that door, even just for coffee, even just to talk about the garden or the students, I'll be ready. No past, no empire, just us, as we are now. I studied her face, the same face I had loved, now stripped of every layer of pride and polished performance. Coffee, I said. Next week, the small cafe near the park. No pressure, just conversation. Her smile was small, grateful, and real. I'll be there, she whispered. She left first, giving me space. I remained in the auditorium a moment longer, looking at the empty stage where she had spoken the truth in front of everyone who mattered. The man who had been drenched and mocked on that porch had become the man who chose how the story continued. The garden was planted, the students were inspired, and somewhere between the water that had once soaked my shirt and the quiet coffee we would share next week, the door I had left ajar was slowly opening on its own. The neighborhood continued to heal. The company continued to grow. And the man who had once stood dripping on the sidewalk now stood ready to decide, with open eyes and an open heart, what kind of future he wanted to build next. One honest step at a time. The small cafe near the park smelled of fresh espresso and warm pastries on the morning we finally met for coffee. I arrived first, choosing the corner table by the window where sunlight spilled across the wooden surface like a gentle promise. No suit today. Just a simple gray button-down and jeans, the same kind of ordinary clothes Elena had once mocked as proof I could never provide. The platinum band rested on my finger again, not as a chain to the past, but as a quiet reminder of the man I had chosen to become. Elena walked in at exactly 10 o'clock. She wore the same white blouse and dark jeans she had worn at the garden in the scholarship ceremony. No makeup, no designer bag, no armor left to hide behind. When she saw me, her smile was tentative but real, the kind that reaches the eyes instead of stopping at the lips. Thank you for coming, she said softly as she sat across from me. I wasn't sure you would. I said I would. I keep my word. The waiter brought 2 coffees without being asked, black for me, the vanilla latte she had always loved but could never afford on her own before. We sat in comfortable silence for the first few minutes, watching people stroll through the park outside. Children chased bubbles, an older couple walked hand in hand. Life moved forward in small, ordinary ways. I've been volunteering at the garden every morning, she said eventually, stirring her latte slowly. The children ask about you. They want to know the man who built the neighborhood without ever needing to be seen. I tell them the truth now, that you carried everything so the rest of us could keep our pride. They listen like it's the most important story they've ever heard. She looked up, eyes clear and steady. My family is doing better too. My father teaches 3 classes a week and says the students remind him of the man he wishes he had been. Marcus started night classes and logistics. He told me last week that delivering packages feels more honest than any bonus he ever took from the company. They don't ask about the money anymore. They ask about you, how you endured the porch that day without breaking. I listened without interrupting. The old anger had faded months ago, replaced by something quieter and more honest. I read your letter again last night, every page. Then I read the student's note from the ceremony. Both reminded me that some doors don't close unless we slam them shut. I'm not slamming this one. Elena's breath caught. She set her cup down carefully. I'm not asking for the marriage back, she said softly. I know that chapter ended the day I threw water on you while strangers clapped. I live with that memory every single day. But if there's space, even the smallest space for us to talk like this, to sit in a cafe and be honest with each other, I want to earn it. Not as the woman who humiliated you, as the woman who is still learning how to see you clearly. We talked for nearly 2 hours, not about the empire, not about the neighborhood, not about the past. We talked about the small things that had always mattered, the way my grandfather used to tell stories on the porch of the old house, the dreams she once had for helping young engineers, the quiet evenings we used to share before pride and silence grew between us. For the first time in years, the conversation felt light and real. 2 people who had survived the same storm beginning to recognize each other again. When the cafe began to fill with the lunch crowd, we stepped outside into the warm sunlight. Elena walked beside me toward the park path, keeping a respectful distance. I have something for you, she said, reaching into her bag. She pulled out a small, carefully wrapped package. It's not expensive, it's just something I made at the foundation with the students. They helped. I opened it slowly. Inside was a simple wooden frame holding a single photograph, the old house on Maple Lane at sunset, the sold sign still in the yard but with a new addition someone had edited in, a small plaque on the porch that read, "Built by Marcus King, protected in silence." The students made it, she explained quietly. They said it should stay in the house as a reminder. I thought you might want it, or that we could place it somewhere together one day. I looked at the photograph for a long moment, then back at her. Thank you, I said. I'll keep it. We walked a little further. The park path curved gently beneath the oak trees where we had sat weeks earlier. Fireflies were already beginning to rise even though it was still daylight, tiny sparks of possibility flickering in the grass. I'm not ready to say forever, I told her honestly, but I'm not ready to say never either. The neighborhood is healing, the company is stronger than ever, and I am learning how to live without carrying everything alone. Maybe we can do this again next week. Same cafe, same table, just conversation. Elena's eyes shone with quiet hope, but she didn't reach for my hand. She simply nodded. I would like that more than anything, she whispered. No pressure, no expectations, just us, learning each other again. She turned to leave, then paused. One last thing, she said. The new buyers on Maple Lane asked me to tell you they planted a tree in the backyard. They named it after your grandfather. They said it felt right. She walked away down the path, steps light and unhurried. I watched until she disappeared around the bend, then looked down at the framed photograph in my hands. The man who had stood dripping on that porch 6 months ago had become the man who now chose how the story continued. The garden was growing. The students were dreaming. The neighborhood was healing. And somewhere between the water that had once soaked my shirt and the quiet coffee we would share again next week, a new chapter had quietly begun, not built on silence or pride, but on honesty, grace, and the slow, patient work of becoming the people we were always meant to be. The glass was empty, the ground beneath it was solid, and the future, for the first time in 6 long years, felt like it belonged to both of us. The second coffee meeting arrived on a crisp Thursday morning exactly 1 week later. I sat at the same corner table by the window, sunlight warming the wood between us like a quiet bridge. The framed photo Elena had given me now rested on the mantel in the penthouse. A small wooden reminder that some things broken can still be made beautiful again. I wore the same simple gray button-down, the platinum band still on my finger, and waited with the kind of calm that only comes after months of letting truth settle into the bones. Elena arrived at 10 o'clock sharp. She carried a small paper bag from the bakery across the street and wore the same white blouse and jeans that had become her quiet uniform of honesty. No designer labels, no performance. Just Elena, the woman who had once thrown water in my face while strangers clapped, now choosing to show up with nothing left to hide. "I brought muffins," she said softly as she sat down, sliding the bag across the table. "The students at the foundation made them yesterday. They said the blueberry ones are for the man who built the neighborhood in silence. They wanted you to have them." I opened the bag. The scent of fresh blueberries rose between us like a small offering of peace. "Thank you," I said. "Tell them I'll stop by next week to thank them myself." We ordered the same drinks as before, black coffee for me, vanilla latte for her, and for the first hour we spoke of ordinary things. The new community garden was thriving. The children had already harvested their first tomatoes. The scholarship students were preparing final projects, several of them inspired by the story she had told at the ceremony. Her father had started a small mentoring group at the engineering college. Her brother Marcus had received his first promotion at the logistics firm and sent a short message through the office. "I finally understand what real work feels like. Thank you for the example." Elena stirred her latte slowly, eyes honest. "I told them the full story last week. Not just the parts that make me look better. I told them I stood on that porch and threw water on you while everyone laughed. I told them I celebrated selling a house that was never mine. I told them I mocked the man who had protected every single one of us for 6 years. They listened without judgment. One of the older students said, "That's why we need more men like Mr. King, the ones who carry everything without needing applause." She looked up at me, voice steady but soft. "I'm still learning, Marcus, every day. I wake up in the small apartment and remember the moment the water hit your face. It doesn't haunt me the way it used to. Now it teaches me. I'm trying to become the kind of woman who would never throw that glass, the kind of woman who sees the man in front of her instead of the story she wants to believe." I listened without interrupting. The cafe hummed around us, people laughing, cups clinking, life moving forward in small, honest ways. After a while, I said, "I've been thinking about the neighborhood. The new garden is doing well. The scholarship program is expanding. Next month, we're breaking ground on a community center for the students. I'd like you to be part of the planning if you want. Not because of the past, because of the work you're doing now at the foundation." Her eyes brightened with quiet surprise. "I would like that," she whispered, "very much. No title, no special treatment, just helping where I can." We talked for another hour about plans for the center, about the students' ideas, about the future of Heritage Estates as a place where dreams could grow without the weight of old pride. For the first time since the porch, the conversation felt like two people building something new instead of repairing something broken. When the cafe began to fill with the lunch crowd, we stepped outside into the sunlight. Elena walked beside me along the park path, keeping the same respectful distance she had chosen since the first meeting. The oak tree where we had sat weeks earlier stood tall above us, leaves rustling gently in the breeze. "I have something else for you," she said, reaching into her bag again. This time she pulled out a small leather journal. "It's not a letter, it's the notes I've been keeping since the meeting. Every day I write one thing I'm grateful about the man I hurt, one thing I'm learning, one way I'm trying to be better. I thought maybe one day you might want to read them, or maybe not. It's yours either way." I took the journal. The cover was simple, the pages already filled with her neat handwriting. "Thank you," I said. "I'll read them when I'm ready." We stopped beneath the oak tree. Fireflies were beginning to flicker even in daylight, tiny sparks of possibility rising from the grass. "I'm not asking for more than this," Elena said softly. "Coffee, conversation, a chance to show you the woman I'm becoming. But if there ever comes a day when you want to walk this path again, or sit on this bench, or even, one day, stand on the porch of a new house together, I'll be ready. not as the woman who threw the water, as the woman who learned how to catch it instead. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the truth in her eyes. The pride was gone. The performance was gone. What remained was honesty, humility, and the quiet courage it took to show up week after week without demanding anything in return. "One day at a time," I said. "Next week, same cafe, same table. We'll see where the conversation takes us." Her smile was small, grateful, and full of hope. "I'll be there," she whispered. She turned and walked down the path, steps light and unhurried. I watched until she disappeared around the bend, then opened the journal to the first page. The entry was dated the day after the community meeting. Day 1. Today I saw the man I hurt stand in front of everyone and speak with grace instead of anger. I am grateful he still exists. I'm learning that real love doesn't need to be loud, it only needs to be honest. Today I begin again. I closed the journal and slipped it into my pocket beside the student's note. The park path curved gently beneath the oak trees. The neighborhood lights would soon begin to glow in the distance, every house on the street now part of something honest and shared. The man who had been drenched and mocked on that porch 6 months ago had become the man who now chose how the story continued, one honest conversation, one small step, one quiet act of grace at a time. Tomorrow, the community center plans would be shared with the students. Tomorrow, Elena would meet me at the cafe. And somewhere between the water that had once soaked my shirt and the gentle light of these new mornings, a new chapter was quietly being written, not in silence or pride, but in the patient, honest work of two people learning to see each other clearly for the first time ever. The glass was long empty. The ground beneath it was solid. And the future, for the first time in 6 long years, felt like it might still have room for both of us. The third coffee meeting happened on a warm Thursday morning, exactly 1 week later. I arrived early again, the same corner table by the window waiting like an old friend. Sunlight spilled across the wood, catching the edge of the small leather journal Elena had given me the week before. I had read every page the night before. Her daily reflections, her quiet admissions, her growing understanding of the man she had once humiliated on that porch. Each entry ended with the same simple line, "Today, I choose to see him clearly." I kept the journal in my pocket now, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof that some apologies are lived instead of spoken. Elena walked in at 10 o'clock carrying 2 fresh coffees, black for me, vanilla latte for her, and the same paper bag from the bakery. She wore the white blouse and jeans that had become her quiet uniform, hair loose, eyes clear and steady. When she sat down, she didn't reach for my hand. She simply placed the coffees between us and offered a small, genuine smile. "The students made cinnamon rolls this morning," she said. "They said these are for the man who taught them that real power doesn't need to shout. I thought we could share them." We did. The conversation flowed easily now, not forced, not careful, just honest. We talked about the new community center plans that would break ground next month. She told me the students had voted to name one of the classrooms after my grandfather. I told her the garden had produced its first full harvest and that the children were already planning a small market for the neighborhood. We laughed softly about the little boy who had gotten dirt on his nose the day of the ribbon cutting, the same boy who now asked every week when Mr. King would come plant with them again. For the first time since the porch, the laughter between us felt clean. After an hour, Elena set her cup down and looked at me directly. "I read the final divorce papers again last night," she said quietly. "They're official now. The house on Maple Lane belongs to the new buyers under the lease. The neighborhood belongs to you. Everything is settled. I kept nothing except the apartment and the work at the foundation, and I'm grateful for that. It feels right." She paused, then continued with the same honesty that had slowly rebuilt the space between us. "I don't regret the divorce. I regret the woman I was when I asked for it, but I'm learning to live with that. Every morning I wake up and choose to be the person who would never throw that glass of water again. I'm not asking you to forget what happened on the porch. I'm only asking if there's still room in your life for someone who is trying to become better because of it." I looked at her across the table, the woman who had once stood on that porch laughing while water ran down my face, now sitting here with nothing left to hide. There is room, not for the past, not for the empire, for the two people we are now. I've been reading your journal, every entry. You're not the woman who threw the water anymore, and I'm not the man who stood there in silence letting it happen. We're both different now. Her eyes filled with quiet hope, but she didn't push. "Would you like to walk in the park again?" she asked softly. "The oak tree bench, no pressure, just to walk." We left the cafe and walked the familiar path beneath the trees. The fireflies were not yet out, but the leaves rustled overhead like they were whispering approval. Halfway to the bench, Elena stopped and turned to me. "I have one more thing," she said. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small key on a simple ring. "The new buyers on Maple Lane asked me to give this to you. They said the house feels like home now, but they want you to have a key, just in case you ever want to visit the porch where it all began. They planted a tree in the backyard and named it after your grandfather. They said it felt right." I took the key. It was warm from her hand. "Thank you," I said. "Maybe one day we can walk that porch together, not as husband and wife, just as two people who survived the same storm." She smiled, small, real, and full of the kind of hope that comes only after everything has been lost and slowly rebuilt. "I would like that," she whispered, "whenever you're ready." We reached the oak tree bench and sat for a while in comfortable silence. The park was alive around us, children laughing, couples walking, life moving forward in small, honest ways. When the sun began to dip lower, we stood. "Next week," I said. "Same cafe, same time. And maybe after that we can walk to the old porch together, just to see the tree they planted." Elena's eyes shone with grateful tears she didn't let fall. "I'll be there, every week, for as long as it takes." She walked away down the path, steps light and unhurried. I watched until she disappeared around the bend, then looked down at the key in my hand and the journal in my pocket. The man who had stood dripping on that porch 6 months ago had become the man who now chose how the story continued. One honest conversation, one small step, one quiet act of grace at a time. The garden was thriving. The students were dreaming bigger. The neighborhood was healing. And somewhere between the water that had once soaked my shirt and the gentle light of these new mornings, a new chapter was quietly being written, not in silence or pride, but in the patient, honest work of two people learning to see each other clearly for the very first time. The glass was long empty. The ground beneath it was solid. And the future, for the first time in 6 long years, felt like it might still have room for both of us. The weeks that followed our second coffee meeting settled into a rhythm that felt both new and familiar, like a melody I had once known but was learning to play again in a different key. Every Thursday morning, I arrived at the cafe corner table a few minutes early, sunlight warming the wood between us. Every Thursday, Elena arrived at 10 a.m. carrying fresh pastries from the foundation students and the same quiet honesty that had slowly rebuilt the space between us. We no longer spoke of the porch or the water or the sold sign that had once stood like a victory flag in the yard of the house she thought she owned. We spoke of the garden's first harvest, the students' latest projects, the community center plans that were already breaking ground. We spoke of small, ordinary things that felt enormous because they were shared without pride or silence. The neighborhood continued to heal in its own quiet way. The new buyers on Maple Lane invited neighbors to their first backyard barbecue under the tree they had planted in my grandfather's memory. I attended with a simple dish of potato salad and stayed late into the evening, listening to children laugh while fireflies rose from the grass. Elena was there too, helping serve lemonade, her laughter soft and genuine among the group. No one mentioned the glass of water anymore. The memory had become part of the soil, something that had once stung but now helped things grow. On a warm Saturday afternoon, I finally walked the old porch again. The new owners had left the key for me as promised. I turned it in the lock and stepped inside the house that had once been my grandfather's gift and later my secret anchor. The walls were freshly painted in soft blues and grays. The kitchen smelled of fresh bread. The backyard tree stood tall and young, its leaves rustling in the breeze like a quiet greeting. I stood on the same porch where Elena had once raised her champagne glass in triumph and thrown water onto my face while strangers clapped. The spot where the water had hit the concrete was dry now, but I could still see the memory clearly, not with anger, but with the kind of clarity that only comes after everything has been laid bare. My phone vibrated. Elena. I answered. "Marcus," she said softly, "I saw your car parked outside the house. I wasn't following you. I was just walking the neighborhood like I used to. May I join you on the porch, just for a moment?" I looked at the empty swing where we had once sat together on quiet evenings. "Come," I said. She arrived a few minutes later, walking up the path with the same light steps she had carried since the garden ribbon cutting. She stopped at the bottom of the porch stairs, waiting for permission. I gestured to the swing. "Sit." We sat side by side, leaving respectful space between us. The new owners had hung wind chimes that tinkled gently in the breeze. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The house felt like a bridge between yesterday and tomorrow. "I used to stand right here and dream about the life we would build," Elena said quietly. "I never saw that you were already building it. I thought the house was the only thing tying us down. Instead, it was the only thing holding us up." She turned slightly towards me, eyes honest and steady. "I've been thinking about the students at the foundation. They asked me yesterday if I would tell them more about the man who funded their dreams in silence. I said yes, but only if I could tell the full story, including the part where I threw water on him while everyone laughed. They deserve the truth, and so do you." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. "This is the speech I wrote for their next ceremony. I want you to read it first. If there's anything you don't want me to say, I won't say it." I unfolded the paper. Her handwriting was neat and careful. The speech was honest, unflinching, and full of grace. She spoke of the man who carried an entire neighborhood while being called useless. She spoke of her own blindness and cruelty. She spoke of learning that real power protects others long before it reveals itself. I read it twice, then folded it again. "You can read it, all of it." Her eyes filled with quiet gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. We sat on the swing a while longer, the wind chimes singing softly above us. The sun dipped lower, painting the porch in warm gold. When the light began to fade, Elena stood. "I'll see you Thursday at the cafe," she asked. "Thursday," I confirmed. "And maybe after that we can walk here again, together." Her smile was small and full of the kind of hope that comes only after everything has been lost and slowly rebuilt. "I would like that." She walked down the path and disappeared around the corner. I remained on the swing until the first stars appeared, the key to the house still warm in my hand. The man who had stood dripping on this same porch 6 months ago had become the man who chose how the story continued, one honest conversation, one shared garden, one quiet walk at a time. Tomorrow, the community center would break ground with the students helping plant the first trees. Tomorrow, Elena would speak at the foundation ceremony with the full truth. And somewhere between the water that had once soaked my shirt and the gentle light of these new evenings, a new chapter was being written, not in silence or pride, but in the patient, honest work of two people learning to see each other for the very first time. The glass was long empty. The ground beneath it was solid, and the future, for the first time in 6 long years, felt like it might still have room for both of us. The final Thursday coffee meeting arrived on a morning so clear it felt like the city itself had decided to breathe easier. I sat at the corner table by the window one last time, sunlight warming the wood between us like it had every week for months. The small leather journal Elena had given me now rested on the table, every page read, every entry absorbed. The platinum band was still on my finger, no longer a weight of the past, but a quiet symbol of choices remade. Elena walked in at 10 o'clock carrying the familiar paper bag from the bakery. The students had sent cinnamon rolls again, this time with a small handwritten note taped to the top, for Mr. King and the woman who learned to see him. She placed the bag between us and sat down, her smile soft, steady, and full of the kind of peace that only comes after everything has been lost and slowly rebuilt. We shared the rolls in a comfortable silence at first. The cafe hummed around us, people laughing, cups clinking, life moving forward in small, honest ways. When the coffee arrived, Elena set her cup down and looked at me directly. "I've been thinking about the porch," she said quietly. "Not the day of the water, the days before, when we used to sit there on quiet evenings and talk about dreams we thought we had to earn alone. I miss those evenings. Not the house, not the neighborhood, just us talking without anything standing between us." She reached into her bag and pulled out a single key on a simple ring, the same key the new buyers had given her months earlier. "They asked me to keep it for you," she said. "They said the house feels like home now, but they want you to have a key, just in case you ever want to walk that porch again. They planted a second tree beside the one for your grandfather. This one's for us, for what we might still grow if we choose to." I took the key. It was warm from her hand. "I've been thinking about the porch too," I told her, "and the garden and the students and every Thursday morning here. I've spent 6 years carrying everything in silence, then 6 months learning how to let the truth speak out loud. Now I'm learning something new, how to let someone walk beside me without carrying the weight for them." I turned the key in my fingers, then placed it on the table between us. "I'm ready to walk that porch again, with you. Not as husband and wife, not yet. Maybe not ever in the old way, but as two people who survived the same storm and chose to keep walking forward together, one honest step at a time." Elena's eyes filled with quiet tears, but they didn't fall. She simply nodded, her smile small and full of the kind of hope that only comes after everything has been laid bare. "I would like that more than anything," she whispered. "One step at a time. No rush, no expectations, just us learning each other again." We finished the coffee in the same easy silence we had grown to love. When the cafe began to fill with the lunch crowd, we stepped outside into the sunlight. The park path curved gently beneath the oak trees. Fireflies were not yet out, but the leaves rustled overhead like they were whispering approval. We walked toward Maple Lane together. No hurry, no words needed. The neighborhood had changed in small, beautiful ways. New flowers in every yard, children playing in the community garden, neighbors waving without hesitation. The house on Maple Lane stood quiet and welcoming, the 2 young trees in the backyard swaying gently in the breeze. We climbed the porch steps side by side. The wind chimes tinkled softly above us. Elena stopped at the top, looking at the spot where she had once stood with her champagne glass and thrown water while strangers clapped. "I can still see it," she said quietly. "The water hitting your face, the laughter, the moment I lost everything I didn't know I had." I stood beside her, looking at the same spot. "I can still feel it," I said, "but it doesn't hurt anymore. It taught me something, too. that the ground beneath us was always solid, even when I was drenched and mocked, even when you thought you were winning. The ground never moved. Elena turned to me, eyes honest and clear. "I'm grateful for the ground," she whispered, "and for the man who held it steady when I couldn't see it." We sat on the porch swing together, not touching, not rushing, just sharing the quiet. The new owners waved from the backyard as they tended the trees. Children ran past on the sidewalk laughing. The neighborhood lived on around us, healed and growing. After a long while, Elena spoke again. "Next Thursday?" she asked softly. "Same cafe, same table. And maybe after that, we can walk here again, together." I nodded. "Next Thursday, and every Thursday after that, until the path feels familiar again." She smiled, small, real, and full of the kind of hope that comes after everything has been lost and slowly rebuilt. We stood together on the porch one last time, looking out at the street that had once been the stage for our greatest misunderstanding. The sun dipped lower, painting everything in warm gold. The man who had stood dripping on this porch 6 months ago had become the man who now chose how the story continued. One honest conversation, one shared garden, one quiet walk at a time. The glass was long empty. The ground beneath it was solid. And the future, for the first time in 6 long years, no longer felt like it might have room for both of us. It simply did.